Hi everyone, it's me again, back for some mental wealth reads, going right back into Success Through Positive Mental Attitude. Today we're actually going to do a twofer. We're going to get some 2 chapters in today because chapter 11 happens to be a page and a half, and chapter 12 is about 8 pages. So we're gonna do chapter 11 and chapter 12 together, just so I'm not making a 5-second video, right? So with that said, we're going to go right into chapter 11, which is entitled, Is There a Shortcut to Riches? Is there a shortcut to riches? A shortcut is defined as a way of accomplishing something more directly and quickly than by ordinary procedure. It is a route more direct than that ordinarily taken. And the man who takes the shortcut knows his destination. He knows the route that is more direct. Yet he will never arrive at his destination unless he starts and continues towards it regardless of the interruptions he encounters or the obstacles he meets. In Chapter 2, we listed the 17 success principles as a positive mental attitude, definiteness of purpose, going the extra mile, accurate thinking, self-discipline, the mastermind, applied faith, a pleasing personality, personal initiative, enthusiasm, controlled attention, teamwork, learning from defeat, creative vision, budgeting time and money, maintaining sound physical and mental health, using cosmic habit force. Now, why do we repeat the 17 success principles? We want to show you the shortcut to riches. We want you to take the most direct route. Now, to take the most direct route, you must necessarily think with PMA. And a positive mental attitude results from the application of these success principles. The word think is a symbol. Its meaning for you depends on who you are. Who are you? You are the product of your heredity, environment, physical body, conscious and subconscious mind, experience, and particular position and direction in time and space, and something more, including powers known and unknown. When you think with PMA, you can affect, use, control, or harmonize with all of them. Now, only you can think of you. Only you can think for you. Therefore, the shortcut to riches for you can be expressed in a 6-word symbol. Think with PMA and grow rich. For if you really think with PMA, you will automatically follow through with action. You will employ the PMA principles expressed in this book. Principles that will help you achieve any goal that doesn't violate the laws of God or the rights of your fellow men. A shortcut to riches. Think with PMA and grow rich. If you have PMA, you can do it if you believe you can. That is the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12. Attract, don't repel wealth. Wherever you are, regardless of your age, your education, or your occupation, you can attract wealth. You can also repel it. We say attract, don't repel wealth. This chapter tells you how you can make money. Would you like to be rich? Be truthful with yourself. Of course you would. Or are you afraid to be rich? Perhaps you're sick and because of this, you don't try to acquire wealth. If this be the case, just remember the experience of Milo C. Jones about whom you read in chapter 2. Or if you are a patient in a hospital, you can attract wealth by engaging in study, thinking, and planning time, as George Stefik did. In a hospital bed, think. Time after time, we have studied the careers of successful men. We have discovered that they date their own success from the day they picked up a self-improvement book. Never underestimate the value of a book. Books are tools providing inspiration which can launch you onto a bold new program, and which can also light the dark days that any such program entails. George Stefik was convalescing at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Hines, Illinois. There he discovered, by accident, the value of thinking time. Financially, he was broke. While George was convalescing, he had a great deal of time on his hands. There wasn't too much to do except read and think. He read Think and Grow Rich, and he was ready. An idea occurred to him. Many laundries, George knew, fold their newly ironed shirts over a piece of cardboard to keep the shirts stiff and free from wrinkles. By writing a few letters, George learned that these shirt boards cost the laundries about $4 per thousand. His idea was to sell the boards for $1 a thousand. However, each one would carry an advertisement. The advertisers would, of course, pay for the space, and George would make a profit. George had an idea, and he tried to make it work. When he left the hospital, he got into action. New in the advertising field, he had his problems. But he finally developed successful sales techniques through what others term trial and error, and what we term trial and success. George continued the custom he had started in the hospital to engage in study, thinking, and planning each day. Even when George's business was moving ahead swiftly, he decided to increase his sales by increasing the efficiency of his service. The shirt boards, when withdrawn from the shirts, were not retained by the laundry's customers. Now, he asked himself the question, how can I get families to keep these shirt boards with the advertisements on them? The solution flashed into his mind. What did he do? On one side of the shirt board, he continued to print an advertisement in black and white or in colors. On the other side, he added something new, an interesting game for the children, a delicious recipe for the wife, or a provocative crossword puzzle for the whole family. George tells about one husband who complained that his laundry bill had gone up in a sudden, unaccountable way. Then he discovered that his wife was sending in shirts to the laundry which ordinarily he could have worn another day just to get more out of George's recipes. But George didn't stop there. He was ambitious. He wanted to expand his business still further. Again, he asked himself the question, how? And he found the answer. George Stefik gave the entire $1 per thousand he received from the laundries to the American Institute of Laundering. The institute, in return, recommended that each member help himself and his trade association by using George Stefik's shirt boards exclusively. And thus George made another important discovery. The more you give of that which is good and desirable, the more you get. Now, a carefully planned thinking time session brought George Stefik considerable wealth. He discovered that a time apart is essential to any successful attraction of riches. It is in the quiet that our best ideas occur to us. Don't make the mistake of believing that by a frantic kind of dashing around, you are being your most effective and efficient self. Don't assume that you are wasting time when you take time out for thought. Thought is the foundation upon which all else is built by man. Now, it isn't necessary for you to go to a hospital to establish the habit of reading good motivating books, to think, or to make plans. And your thinking, study, and planning sessions need not be too lengthy. If you invest only 1% of your time in study, thinking, and planning session, it will make an amazing difference in the speed with which you reach your goals. Your day has 1,440 minutes in it. Invest 1% of that time in a study, thinking, and planning session, and you will be astounded at what those 14 minutes do for you. For it may surprise you to find that when you develop this habit, you will receive constructive ideas almost any time or anywhere you might be, while doing the dishes or riding the bus or while taking a bath. Be certain to use two of the greatest, yet simplest working tools ever invented. Tools used by a genius like Thomas Edison, a pencil and a paper, for he always had handy, paper and pencil. And thus you, like him, will record the ideas that came to you day or night. Another requirement to attract wealth is to learn how to set your goal. It is important for you to understand this. Few people, even when they realize its importance, really understand how to set a goal. Learn how to set your goals. There are 4 important things to keep in mind. A. Write down your goal. You will then begin to crystallize your thinking. The very act of thinking as you write will have a tendency to create an indelible impression in your memory. Give yourself a deadline. Specify a time for achieving your objective. This is important in motivating you. Set out in the direction of your goal and keep moving toward it. Set your standards high. Now there seems to be a direct relationship between ease in achieving a goal and the strength of your motives. You have discovered for yourself in Chapter 9 how to motivate yourself at will, and in Chapter 10 to motivate each others. And the higher you set your major goal, generally speaking, the more concentrated will the effort be And the higher you set your major goal, generally speaking, the more concentrated will be the effort you make to achieve it. The reason is logic will make it mandatory that you at least aim at an intermediate object as well as an immediate one. So aim higher, and then have immediate and intermediate steps leading toward its achievement. The following question should stimulate your thinking. Where will you be and what will you be doing 10 years from today if you keep doing what you are doing now? D. Aim high. It is a particular thing that no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand prosperity and abundance, than is required to accept misery and poverty. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. It gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I asked of life, life would have willingly paid. You have to be bold enough to ask of life more than you may right now feel you are worth, because it is an observable fact that people tend to rise to meet demands that are put upon them. While it is exceedingly desirable that you blueprint your program from beginning to end, this is not always feasible. One doesn't know all the answers between the beginning of a great enterprise or journey and its ending. But if you know where you are and where you want to be, and you start from where you are to get to where you want to be, you will, if you keep properly motivated, move forward step by step until you get there. Take that first step. The important thing after setting a goal is taking action. A 63-year-old grandmother, Mrs. Charles Philippia, decided that she was going to walk from New York City to Miami, Florida. She reached Miami and, while there, was interviewed by a newspaperman. They wanted to know if the idea of such a long journey on foot hadn't frightened her. How did she ever summon courage to make such a journey with her feet as her only mode of travel? It doesn't take courage to take one step, replied Mrs. Philippia. And that's all I really did. I just took one step, and then I took another step, and then another, and here I am. Yet you must take that first step. It makes no difference how much thinking and study time you spend. It will avail you little unless you also act. One of the authors was introduced to a man in Phoenix, Arizona by a friend. It was a rather odd introduction. Meet the man who received $1 million cash for a gold mine and now has $1 million and also owns the mine. How in the world did you manage such a thing? Came the question, asked with considerable awe. Oh, I had an idea, but I didn't have any money. I did have a pick and a shovel, so I took my pick and my shovel and went out to make my idea a reality, he responded. And then it occurred to me, if I would search for a gold mine and dig around the vein, should I find a mine, one of the large mining corporations could afford to work the mine, whereas I wouldn't have the necessary capital. You know, mining machinery costs money today. So I searched for and found a vein of gold. Every indication was that I had made a very rich strike, so I sold it for $2 million. The terms were $1 million in cash and a first mortgage of $1 million. While mining operations were underway, the vein ran out. I informed the owners of the mining company that if they wanted to abandon the mine, I would take back and cancel their mortgage. They accepted. So you see, I got $1 million cash for the mine and still have the $1 million and the mine. Wealth repelled with NMA. A positive mental attitude will attract wealth, but a negative mental attitude will do just the opposite. With a positive mental attitude, you will keep trying until you achieve the wealth you are seeking. Now, you might start with a positive mental attitude and make your first step forward. Yet you may become influenced by the negative side of your talisman and stop when you are just one step from reaching your destination. You may fail to employ one of the 17 success principles. Here's a very good example. Let's call our man Oscar. In the latter part of 1929, he was at the railroad station in Oklahoma City, where it was necessary for him to wait several hours for a train connection east. He had spent months in the western deserts in temperatures as high as 110 degrees. He was seeking oil for Eastern concern, and he was successful. Oscar was a graduate of MIT. It is said that he had combined the old divining rod, galvanometer, magnetometer, oscillograph, radio tubes, and other instruments into a doodlebug for detecting oil deposits. Now, Oscar had received word that the company he represented was insolvent. it had become bankrupt because the president had used the firm's large cash resources in speculation in the stock market. The market crashed in late 1929. The Oscar was on his way home, he was out of a job, and the outlook was rather dismal. The influence of NMA began to exert a powerful influence on him. Because he had to wait several hours, he decided to occupy himself by setting up his instrument in the railroad station. The reading on his instrument was so high in its positive indication of oil deposits that Oscar, in a rage, impulsively kicked the instrument and destroyed it. You see, Oscar was frustrated. There couldn't be that much oil. There couldn't be that much oil, he shouted repeatedly in disgust. But Oscar was frustrated. He was under the influence of a negative mental attitude. The opportunity for which he had been searching lay at his very feet. He had to make one step to reach it, but because of the influence of NMA, he refused to recognize it. He lost faith in his own invention, and had he been under the influence of PMA, he would have attracted wealth, not repelled it. Applied faith is one of the important 17 success principles. The test of your faith is whether you apply it at the same time of your greatest need. NMA had led Oscar to believe that many of the things that he had faith in were wrong. As you recall, the Depression brought a fear consciousness into the Depression brought a fear consciousness into the mind of many persons. Oscar was one. He had worked hard and sacrificed, yet he was out of a job through no fault of his own. The president of his company had been held in high esteem by Oscar, yet this man whom he trusted embezzled the company's funds. Now the machine that had proved its value in the past seemed to have gone haywire. Yes, Oscar was frustrated. When Oscar boarded the train at the Oklahoma City Railroad station that day, he left his doodlebug behind, and he also left one of the nation's richest oil deposits. A short time later, Oklahoma City was found to be literally floating on oil. Oscar has become a living demonstration of the application of two principles. A positive mental attitude attracts wealth, and a negative mental attitude repels it. Wealth can be acquired on a modest salary. But you may say, all this positive and negative mental attitude is very fine for someone who's out to make $1 million, but I'm not really interested in making $1 million. Of course I want security. I want enough to live well and take care of the needs I will someday have when I retire. What about me if I am an office employee? What about me if I have just a fair salary? Now here's our answer. You too can acquire wealth. Wealth enough for security, or even wealth enough to become rich in spite of what you say. Just let the PMA influence of your talisman affect you favorably. We'll prove that this can be done. And if for some reason you aren't fully convinced, just read a book, The Richest Man in Babylon. And then make your first step forward. Keep going and you'll have the financial security or wealth you are seeking. Now that's exactly what Mr. Osborne did. Mr. Osborne was a salaried employee, yet he acquired wealth. It wasn't so many years ago that he retired with the statement, "I now spend my time having my money make money for me while I do what I want to do." Again, the principle used by Mr. Osborne is so obvious that it is often unseen. The principle he learned, and the one that you also can employ, will now be stated in a very few words. In reading The Richest Man in Babylon, Mr. Osborne found that wealth can be acquired if you A. just save one dime out of every dollar you earn, B. each 6 months invest your savings and interest or divided returns from these savings and investments, and C. when you invest, seek expert advice on safe investments, and thus you won't gamble and lose your principal. Let us repeat, that's exactly what Mr. Osborne did. Just think of it. You can have security or wealth by saving only a dime out of each dollar you earn and investing it safely. When should you start? Do it now. Now let's contrast Mr. Osborne's experience with that of a man who had good physical health and read an inspirational book. He was 50 years old when he was introduced to Napoleon Hill. This man smiled when he said, "I read your book Think and Grow Rich many years ago, but I'm not rich. Napoleon Hill laughed and then replied seriously, but you can be rich. Your future is ahead of you. You must prepare yourself to be ready. And in making yourself ready for the opportunities that are available to you, you must first develop a positive mental attitude. And the interesting thing is that this man did heed the author's advice. 5 years later, the man wasn't rich, but he had developed a positive mental attitude, and he was on his way to having wealth. He had been many thousands of dollars in debt. Within the 5-year period, he had gotten completely out of debt and had begun making investments with money he had saved. He developed PMA as he studied the book Think and Grow Rich. He did not only read it, he had learned to recognize principles and apply them. When the NMA side of his talisman was influencing him, he was like those workmen who blame their tools for poor craftsmanship. Have you ever blamed your tools? Where does the fault lie? If you own a perfect camera and use the right film, if you have the proper set of rules to take perfect pictures under all types of circumstances, if someone else takes perfect photographs with your camera but yours are failures, does the fault lie with the cameras? Could it be that you have read the rules but haven't taken the time to understand them? Or if you do understand them, that you don't apply the rules? Could it be that you will read Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, a book that could change the entire course of your life for the better, without taking the time to understand, memorize self-motivators, learn principles that will guarantee success, and apply them? Your answer will be evident to you by your action. Now, it's not too late to learn. If you haven't learned by now, you might as well learn now. You will not succeed consistently unless you know and understand the rules. You will not continuously succeed unless you apply the rules. Therefore, take the time to understand and apply what you are reading in this book. PMA will help you. The home of my dreams. Remember the thought that you think and the statements you make regarding yourself determine your mental attitude. If you have a worthwhile objective, find the one reason why you can achieve it rather than the hundreds of reasons why you can't. One of the rules in obtaining what you want through PMA is to act once you have your sights on a goal. Another is go the extra mile. W. Clement Stone tells of the following experience which illustrates both rules. One April evening, while I was visiting Frank and Claudia Noonan in Mexico City, Claudia commented, "I wish we could have a home in the Jardins del Pedregal de San Angel. This is the most desirable section of that beautiful city." "Why don't you?" I asked. Frank laughed and answered, "We don't have the money." "Does that make any difference if you know what you want?" I inquired, and then without waiting for a response, I asked a question that I might ask of you. By the way, have you ever read an inspirational, motivational book like Think and Grow Rich, The Power of Positive Thinking, I Can, I Dare You, TNT, Applied Imagination, Turn on the Green Lights in Your Life, Acres of Diamonds, or The Magic of Believing? No, was the response. Thereupon, I told several experiences of those persons who knew what they wanted, read an inspirational book, listened to its message, and then got into action. And I even told how years ago I purchased a new $30,000 home on my own terms with a $1,500 down payment, and how in due course it was completely paid for. I promised to send one of the recommended books. I did. Frank and Claudia Noonan were ready. It was the following December, while studying my library, that I received a telephone call from Claudia, who said, "We just arrived from Mexico City, and the first thing Frank and I wish to do is to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "We want to thank you for our new home in the Jardins del Pedregal de San Angel." A few days later at dinner, Claudia explained, "Late one Saturday afternoon, Frank and I were relaxing at home. Some friends from the States telephoned and asked if we would drive them to the Jardins del Pedregal de San Angel. It just so happens that we were both rather exhausted, and besides, we had taken them there earlier in the week." Frank was ready to beg off when an expression used in the book flashed through his mind: go the extra mile. While driving them through this man-made paradise, I saw the home of my dreams, even the swimming pool I longed for. Claudia is the swimming champion, Claudia Eckert. Frank bought it. Frank said, "You might like to know that although the property cost in excess of 500,000 pesos, I only made a deposit of 5,000 pesos. It costs less for our family to live in the Jardines de Pedregal de San Angel than in our former home. Why is this? I asked in surprise. Well, we bought 2 homes that were on the property instead of 1. The rent from one house is enough to make payments on the entire enterprise. Now, this wasn't so surprising after all. It's quite common for a family to buy a duplex apartment and rent one and live in the other. What is surprising to a person without experience is how easy it is to get what you want by understanding and applying the success principles to be found in an autobiography or self-improvement book. Attract wealth with PMA, we say. You say, money makes money and I have no money. This is a negative mental attitude. If you don't have money, use OPM. That's what the next chapter is all about. Okay, so finishing chapter 11 and 12. What I really like about this is the idea of baby stepping, right? Starting small. And I think it's been mentioned before, right? In the other chapters where, you have this goal, you aim for that goal, but you also make sure to do the little things that lead up to that goal, right? It's the whole idea of biting off more than you can chew, right? It's the idea of, aiming for something huge, and let's say like I want to make $1 million in a day. That's not going to happen. Probably most likely unless you win the lottery, right? Which doesn't happen to most people, right? But if you say my goal for the next year is to have $100,000 in my bank account. Okay, cool. What do you got to start doing right now? You got to start saving up money, right? You got to start looking at your assets, looking at your spending account, your spending habits, the income that you have, right? And planning, okay, where can I stop spending? Where can I start saving? And then are there any areas in my life that I can even start monetizing to add more money to that account too, to add to my income? So that I can reach that goal of 100,000 in my bank account by next year, right? This is very, 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 very important sort of thing, especially in mental health, right? It's not all uncommon for someone to come into my office and say, you know what, Alicia, I want to get rid of all of my anxiety, right? I would really just like to not have this going on, right, any longer, right? And it's a totally reasonable goal, right? Or at least it's understandable, right? Nobody wants anxiety, no one wants depression, nobody wants mental illness, right? But what has to happen almost always is I can't just say, okay, go home, do this thing, and you will not have anxiety anymore, right? Not even medication can do that, right? Medication can take away anxiety for sure, but over time, not sustainable, right? Because most people don't want to be taking medication for the rest of their lives, right? So what we have to do is we have to say, okay, tell me about your lifestyle. Tell me what your environment is like. What is your home life like? What's your work life like? Do you have a family? Do you have any pets? Do you have any sort of hobbies? Do you have anything? Tell me about your entire life, right? So that I can tell you exactly where we need to start tweaking things, right? And start making these little changes, right? Because one, again, like I said, you cannot rebuild Rome in a day, right? It's going to take day after day after day of doing the same thing, right? Turning your positive mental health into a habit, right? And you got to do that repetitively in order for it to get there, right? That's number one. The second thing is, like most cases, most situations, having a sudden change like that is a big change like that, is not something that people are as ready for as they think, right? Again, it's the idea of, let's say somebody who just is so used to not having any money, right? And then let's say one day they do win the lottery, right? The Mega Millions, right? it's not uncommon for all of that money to go away. You hear about this in Hollywood, right? Actors that make millions off of their movies and their TV shows and whatnot going bankrupt, and we, the common folk, ask the question, how on earth do you go bankrupt with all that money? Well, because they have so much of it, and no rules, no guidance, nothing that establishes a sort of structure about having this money is in place, right? And so, the money just goes, right? Because you have it and it's gone, right? So with success, as Napoleon Hill is saying, with success comes rules, right? But also with success comes a very necessary process and a development of character, right? There needs to be a proper receptacle for that success once it once it has occurred, right? Otherwise, that success is going to go right out the window, right? And it's pretty much the same in mental health, right? That's why I say that medication is helpful, and it may chemically get rid of the anxiety, but if you are not also doing practicing a lifestyle that would eliminate that anxiety naturally, then the medication is still going to do its job, but your life isn't actually going to be better, right? You may not feel it chemically, but in the hypothetical situation of you running out of medication, right? Or let's say for whatever reason, your psychiatrist is no longer able to prescribe that, right? It happens from time to time. Then you're, where are you at, right? What kind of a situation are you in? Now you have to go back to the drawing board and say, oh, well, I gotta learn to live in a way that is anxiety free without this medication, right? And if you hadn't to that point developed a lifestyle that would allow you to not need the medication, which is the actual goal of medication and therapy, is so that you don't need it anymore, right? Then you're essentially wasting all that money on the prescription. You're wasting all the money on the time you're taking out of your work life to go to these appointments to get these prescriptions, right? And you're going to be back to where you started, right? And that's precisely, what Napoleon Hill is trying to say here. There needs to be a development of character to be able to handle the change that you want, right? Or if it's not a development of character, just a development of a positive lifestyle. And he kind of even mentions that with his idea of negative PMA or negative mental attitude repels it, right? Repels that success. It's the same with mental health, right? The idea that you're not going to be able to get the positive mental health that you want, that's a repellent. That's what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You are expecting this good to not happen, and because of that, you are repelling it. You are keeping it away from yourself, and that is essentially what is being discussed here. Now, I have to wrap this up pretty quickly, but just as a takeaway from this section, right? The idea is, if there's a change that you want, right, write it down, make it a goal, and make it objective. Make it obtainable, right? Like I said, by 6 months, and this is what we do in the treatment plans we have to write for you guys, or for our clients at least, for insurance purposes, but also for our own treatment purposes, right? Client is reporting this sort of a mental illness, right? What is our goal? Our goal is to eliminate the symptoms of this goal. And we want to see progress of this goal or complete elimination of this goal in 6 months, right? That not only, allows us to keep in mind what we're treating you for, but it also allows us to make an even more detailed list of, okay, so in order to get there, we need to get here. In order to get here, we need to get here. And in order to get here, we need to get here. You know, and us being here, you know, means that, you know, okay, our first step should be whatever is in here, right? So we can get up to this first level, right? Because no positive or substantial change will come if you are not first taking those steps of change, right? Those steps to eventually get there, right? Because then, let's say, like I said, let's say that success falls through. You've already created rungs in your ladder so that, hey, now I'm just a step down. And that's fine, because I've already created this system that's going to support success in another place. I just have to, you know, brainstorm how to use the ladders, or the rungs of the ladder I've already created to get me somewhere else that I need to go, right? To you know, keep supporting my family or supporting myself or whatever. So, takeaway from today. If you know that there is a goal that you have, whether it's success, mental health, family, whatever you've got, make sure that you are not just aiming for the moon, you know, swinging for the stars. Make sure, you know, we are just trying to, you know, just tossing a ball in front of you, you know, being able to just, you know, move forward just a couple of steps, like that old grandma lady, right? One step at a time, right? And then once you have experienced that, and once you have gotten to a point where you know, you are even seeing success in the small steps, not only will, like I said, you'll have all those rungs of the ladder for you to climb on, but also you'll start gathering hope. You'll start gathering this positive mental attitude because you're finding success in the small things, right? And that's going to build you up, right? So that being all that being said, I do gotta let you guys go. Again, questions, comments, recommendations in the comment section. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.